All right. Hello, everyone. So my research project was on teacher expectation and English language arts achievement. And so here's basically an outline of what my paper is going to look like. I'm starting off with a personal narrative, then a problem statement, and then getting into the literature review. And so the big topic is going to be teacher expectation, and then we're going to move on to bias, and then ELA instructional choices, and then ELA achievements. And so I'm going to start off with the problem. So as I did my research, I found that teachers have a lot of implicit bias, and this implicit bias plays a role in their expectations for students. And so then their expectations actually play a massive role in their instructional decisions because teachers who have higher expectations tend to have or choose a higher level cognitive demanding activities for their students, whereas low expected teachers don't do the same. So, as you would think, this will impact students' achievement. And so students perform to the level of expectation within the classroom, meaning if you have a low expected teaching, well, most of the time those students perform at lower levels at the end of the year test. And if you have a high expected teacher, of course, those students have higher achievement levels. Commonly marginalized students continue to have the lowest achievement levels in reading or language and other subject areas, which is rather interesting. But these students usually have teachers who have low expectations for them as well. And so low achievement leads to a decrease in opportunities for colleges and careers. And so this has a detrimental impact on students. And so therefore something needs to be changed because children that are commonly marginalized grow up and don't necessarily have the same opportunities as the other students in the classroom that have, or students who have high expectant teachers, which is kind of unfair. All right, so I get into the lit review, and this is about teacher expectation. And so commonly marginalized students, they classify those as females, non-white skinned students, non-English speaking students, students from low SES. And I also found some other research where the kids, there weren't white children in there. They were different ethnic backgrounds, but there were some that were considered the ethnic minority, whereas others were considered the ethnic majority. And so what I found is teachers with low expectations, they really have a lot of deficit thinking. And so the minute that children from these different scenarios walk into their classroom, instead of assuming that the children have some kind of capital, they immediately think, oh, this kid can't do. And so they expect nothing from them or expect little from them. And then they teach them that way, which impacts their achievement levels. And so therefore instructional choices are affected extremely by deficit thinking. And at the same time, this causes students to have a lack of fundamental reading or language knowledge, in which they need actually for all subject areas. I mean, if you can't read, you're going to have a lot of problems in school and throughout life. And so I move on from the teacher expectation to the bias subsection. And so one of the first studies that I looked at was about lookism, which is actually interesting. And it's where teachers actually just take a look at a student and they make judgments about their abilities. So the way they saw students were that African American males were more likely to drop out of school, or African American and Hispanic females were more likely to get pregnant, and Asian students were more likely to attend Ivy League colleges. And so these were just some of the implicit biases that some of these teachers had just from basically looking at a student, and assumed these things about the student. Females were also rated higher than males for their reading ability, which was kind of interesting because for females, it actually worked out in their best interest when it came to reading. That their teachers just assumed because they were a girl that they were going to be able to read better. And even though some of their male counterparts actually had the same level of achievement as they did, the whole fact that they were a girl actually increased their likelihood of having a teacher that had higher expectations for them. At the same time, there were low expectancy levels for children that were considered ethnic minorities. Or, and this was going back to the study that was conducted by Ruby Davis and some of her friends, and they studied, they were not white people, and so some of the people in that situation were considered ethnic minorities, and the whole fact that they were considered ethnic minorities just drove the teachers into having low expectations. At the same time, I also found a lot of studies where certain ethnic backgrounds or SES played a part in teachers' expectations, and all of this was stemming from their implicit bias. So then I get into the part of instructional choices, and this instructional choices that were stemming from people's expectations, well, teachers' expectations. And so basically this is what I found. Expectations, they impact instructional choices. And so low expected teachers, they're more likely to use ability grouping. They're more likely to make students work alone. They're more likely to have low challenge classrooms. Whereas high expectant teachers are more likely to have warm and inclusive classrooms. The teachers were actually happier because they believed that the students were advanced or above average, and so they found that teaching students like that, or what they believed were like that, actually made the teachers happier. And so these teachers are more likely to establish relationships with their students and use cooperative learning environments. They also used peer tutors. They were more likely to give feedback. They were more likely to incorporate some kind of praise in their classroom. And so overall, kids felt welcome, and they felt like they were learning, and they were motivated in high expectant classrooms. Even if the child wasn't performing on level, if they had a high expectant teacher, they still felt a sense of belonging in the classrooms. And so I also found that teachers might lack some knowledge to adequately gauge a student's reading ability. And so some of their instructional choices wasn't just based on their biases, but the whole fact that they were just unsure of how to gauge a student's reading ability, which made them have low expectant classrooms with low cognitive demands. All right, so some work that needs to be done. I still need to write the part about achievement levels. I need to do some kind of wrap up on my or conclusion, whichever you want to call it. I need to check over the citations throughout my paper. just to make sure, double check. And then I need to double and triple check my reference page. And then I need to go through some spelling and grammar. And I always ask my mom to read my paper in hopes that even though she's elderly, that it makes some sense to her and she can give me some feedback. And so I'm almost finished, to be honest with you. I think I'm going to work on the rest of my paper tomorrow and be done with it. So here are my references, and at some point in my life I'm going to have to figure out how to properly copy and paste these things where there's that indentation, on that second line. But for right now, this is just going to have to do. All right, so that's all I have to say about that.